over your head. You got a car to drive. You got hot water. You got food. Don't mistake that. Don't you ever make that reference again.
Putting out this body of work, this project, is for the sake of educating and allowing people to be aware of this illness, how it looks like, what it sounds like.
Have you been drinking? Even if I was drinking and pissy drunk, don't you ever make that reference again, because that's a fucking insult. You don't take care of me, I'll take care of you. And at my worst stage, even if I'm drunk, pissy drunk to the floor, don't you ever make that remark to me. You don't take care of me, I'll take care of you. Where's the iPod?
It's in my bag.
I need it. Can you get it? I need it so I can look up
I'm
something.
gonna give it to you. I have to wipe my hands.
That fucking insulted me. You don't do that. I bought those movies just for us to watch together. Not for you to sit and take and put it by yourself. That's being selfish. What bag is it in? Is it in this bag?
The brown bag.
Don't you ever insult me like that. Don't mind, have you been drinking? Even if I was drunk, pissy drunk, crawling to the floor. What most people do, even if I'm pissy drunk or you put me in the bed, but I'm not drunk. You don't say that. I bought those movies for all of us to watch together. Even if you wanted to watch, oh mom, you know what? Since y'all sitting in there, can I start the movie? That's what you should have done. Not sit up here and say, oh, you been drinking. You don't do that. That's an insult. I born you, which means I was on earth. You got to remember, Sandy, I had you at 26, which means I was old. So don't tell me how to live my life. That's not the first time you said that. And I can handle my alcohol. When I'm drunk, I stay home. This is where I'm supposed to be drunk if I'm going to be drunk. It just so happened I'm not drunk. But I don't appreciate that comment because you always make that inference. Don't do it again. I already told you when I first walked in that I was having a bad day. My fucking window got busted out and don't know how it got busted. I already told you that. So I'm sitting in there drinking my wine. I ain't even drinking hot liquor. And you want to come sit down and say, oh, you been drinking? Don't do that. Because you're just going to piss me off. And if I was so drunk, I wouldn't be walking up and down talking to you. I would be staggering around and falling all over the place. I can handle my alcohol. I'm 200, almost 200 pounds. You might not see it. My hands alone would tell you I'm big. Don't let the size fool you. I'm thick. I can handle my liquor. So don't you ever do that again. You want to be peaceful? Don't ever inference that I'm drunk. If I come from out, I'm drunk, you're supposed to grab me at the door. So, oh, mom, you must have had a good time. Come go lay down. Don't go referencing I'm drunk, I'm stupid. I brought you into this world. You don't do that.
I didn't call you stupid, Mom.
No, but that's what you're trying to make it seem.
I just asked you a question.
But you're not supposed to even ask that, Sandy. I bought those movies so we all can watch it together. That movie been here since Monday.
Can you drop it? I'm sorry.
No. I just want to let you know.
I'm sorry I watched the movie.
No. I brought those movies since, Monday. I could have watched it Tuesday. I could have watched it Wednesday. I was waiting for Friday or Saturday for all of us to sit down and watch it and laugh together. That's what I was hoping. That is a family movie. At least one of them is. That's why I keep asking you, is it our movie? So we can all sit down, eat our popcorn, and watch it. Because we are not a typical American family. I'm not married. Just to have some fun. But you always do that. Every time I get hyped, you infer that I'm drunk. But you fail to realize, for my body weight, I can drink 10 bottles of beer, and I'll be all right. Don't do that. You treat me like a child. I am not a child.
I wasn't treating
You're
like
getting
a child.
better treatment than most of your friends. I keep telling you, Siani, and you will not see it until it is too late. The time you realize it, you'll be speaking, making a speech over my casket. That's what you're going to be doing. When it's too late, when you're supposed to enjoy me, not enjoy me. When I die is when you want to be trying to sympathize.
So, my mother's monologue here reveals a lot of common tactics and tendencies usually seen in narcissism, as well as some potential unmet needs or trauma that she experienced in childhood. And these unmet needs could definitely be what's fueling her behavior in the voice memo. I want to preface with this before I dissect this voice memo with you all for the purpose of educating, because narcissism is such an insidious illness, and the masks that they wear for different people, friends and family, is I want to say it's good, but because like I'm able to detect it, it's like it's not good. Like if people can detect it, how good is it? So I mean, especially if, you know, there are certain tactics and traits and tendencies that are shown in a narcissist, whereas, you know, we could read about in a book or watch a few YouTube videos and say, oh, okay, so this is how they are. Having lived with my mother until the age of 19 and being in contact with her up until the age of 27, despite that reality, I know that I can't formally diagnose her with narcissistic personality disorder. Putting out this body of work, this project, is for the sake of educating and allowing people to be aware of this illness, how it looks like, what it sounds like, because we can easily watch videos and read books about these kind of people, and I would even say have experiences with them, but even with the experience, because of the gaslighting mostly, it's difficult to be able to take that experience and talk about it with someone who isn't a licensed professional and or someone who specifically dealing with the effects of narcissistic abuse. However, having observed the various traits that she has and her behaviors that align with various types of narcissism, whether it be covert, grandiose, self-righteous, or communal, I do believe my proximity to her, and from what I've witnessed when I'm not involved in the abuse, I believe my proximity to her and what I've witnessed behind closed doors regarding myself and my sister give me insight, a unique insight into her character, her true character. While I try and refrain from making a formal diagnosis because I'm not qualified to do that, I'm not a licensed professional, I still feel confident in my understanding of her narcissistic tendencies. With that being said, for a long time, specifically up until the age of 27, I've excused her behavior to be in line with that of the West African parent, the Liberian parent, you know, when it comes to my family. A lot of this has to do with culture. Alongside an authoritarian style of parenting, the child or the children are expected to follow their, in the narcissistic parent's case, ever-changing rules without question, while emotional engagement is often limited or non-existent. So this strict High control, low warmth style is what the narcissistic mother often employs, with a strong emphasis on obedience and discipline and authority. However, that still doesn't excuse how she spoke to me in the voice memo and how she's always spoken to not only me, but my younger sister as well. Especially after I made it clear to her, I mean, with me being older now, looking back, it's like, okay, it didn't matter that you apologize. But especially at the time, I thought, okay, if I apologize, she can see I'm not her enemy here. I'm not trying to bring her down or do whatever it is she was, accusing me of doing. So let's break some of this down. I want to talk about DARVO, which is a coined term by psychologist Dr. Jennifer Fried from the University of Oregon. And DARVO it's an acronym for deny, attack, reverse victim offender. A classic example in that voice memo. The victim now becomes the offender, right? And vice versa. The original offender has taken up the role of victim. So the perpetrators, in this case, the narcissistic mother, employ this tactic to deflect responsibility, to deny their actions, and shift the blame onto the victim. This is a common manipulation tactic in narcissistic people. And it's often seen in narcissistic abuse, where the abuser denies their behavior, attacks the victim for bringing it up, and then reverses the roles to make themselves appear as the victim. And the actual victim now becomes the offender. I also want to point out the different types of narcissism that she displays. There's like a whole list of different types of narcissists. But I'm just going to speak on what comes to mind with this voice memo. So first, the grandiose narcissist. This is the narcissist that's arrogant, of course, self-aggrandizing, pretentious, vainly adorning, and attention-seeking with little empathy and a lack of self-awareness. They're driven by their grandiose fantasies. Then there's the malignant narcissist. I believe my mother pretty much morphed into this type of narcissism as she had gotten older. Narcissism gets worse with age, which is why I have to do this now and will continue to do it, because my younger sister is subjected to the worst of it all. When I was introduced to it, when I started to realize, okay, mom's a bit different at the age of 15, it wasn't as bad as it is now, looking at my sister, who is presently 16. And I can't even say when the abuse started for her. That's something that she can, attest to herself when she feels the need to or has the courage to. So the malignant narcissist, it's like the most insidious. This is one of the most dangerous and extreme forms of narcissism, because it's a blend of NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, along with antisocial behavior, aggression, and a lack of empathy. They display malicious intent more severely than their other narcissistic counterparts, and they're willing to manipulate more severely as well. They're willing to harm and exploit others just to satisfy their desires and maintain power and control. Their relationships are isolating, usually physically violent, and they're often unsettling. So yes, my mother would definitely fall into this category as well. No, she was not physically violent in the voice memo, but she has been with me at times where I couldn't get to the phone to record what was happening, or with my younger sister, who has sent me text messages and photos of being physically attacked for no reason at all, other than the reason that the narcissist makes up. I also see a communal narcissist here in this voice memo, because when it comes to what she's doing for her children, what she's supposed to be doing for her children, the fundamentals that a mother is to provide, when she makes the decision to keep the child rather than giving the child up for adoption or just giving them to another family member to take care of, there's a lot of seeking of validation and attention by presenting herself as selfless or generous or sacrificing in order to manipulate or control me and or the situation. So the communal narcissists, these narcissists seek validation, admiration, and attention through acts of service by portraying themselves as highly altruistic or, so generous. They also portray themselves as being empathetic or community focused. However, their seemingly selfless behavior is driven by the desire for recognition rather than genuine concern for other people or whatever they're speaking about that's seemingly good. They thrive on praise and admiration for good deeds, and their self-worth is tied to being morally superior or more caring than others. They want to be seen as the savior or the hero. And lastly, I want to point out the self-righteous narcissist. These people believe they're morally superior than others, and they'll often use judgment, criticism, or condemnation to elevate themselves above others. They maintain their sense of grandiosity by placing themselves in positions of moral authority. They're morally rigid. They'll very often behave as if their beliefs and values are flawless. Like, it's the blueprint, which means their beliefs and values can't be questioned because it's right. It's the most right. To the world, they'll seem super loyal, and these people are often supremely religious and particularly cruel. And this is perfectly linked with my mother as well, not only in this voice memo, but as the narcissism has gotten worse. To have your 15 or 16-year-old daughter be so cut off from everything and almost everyone, unless the narcissist says, okay, you can contact them. Okay, here's your phone. You can play on your phone or go on TikTok or text your friends for a little and then make up another reason as to why she can take it. After being isolated from everyone and everything, being told, she can't do sports in school anymore or any kind of activities, go to school and come straight home. To then that child feeling so trapped, so miserable, to the point where the only place they can turn, because my sister didn't have any contact with me, she was cut off from me as well, to then see your only option as going to the pastor to say, hey, my mother's abusing me. And then for the pastor to go on and tell the abuser, my narcissistic mother, hey, your daughter says you're abusing her. For then the narcissistic mother to get so angry that she decides to put my sister in a mental asylum, coining her as crazy. Oh my gosh, what is she saying? Oh, what is going on? That's where I draw the line. So in the voice memo, my mother is framing her sacrifices as noble, whereas she's positioning herself as morally superior. She believes her actions place her above any kind of questioning from anyone when it comes to her behavior, in this case, her drinking. And listening back to this voice memo, now that I'm older, because it's been some time, I then also realize that she invokes a narrative of sacrifice and hardship to elicit sympathy and deflect criticism. She wants to shame me for questioning her actions by her emphasizing her age and her weight, or her age of, when she had me. Sometimes narcissists say things and it's just like, that doesn't make sense. Like, it just doesn't. When they say certain things, most things, I feel like it just doesn't always correlate. I mean, yeah, they're not they're not like stupid, but like, it's just like, if you know yourself as a person, like, you know who you are, and then you get in front of a narcissist and you start to hear how they talk and how they think, it's like, yeah, that doesn't line up. That doesn't have anything to do with what's going on now. Like, they're definitely not masterminds. They're not. But if you know yourself, you can catch them. And I say if you know yourself because me being a teenager into early 20s, right? A lot of us are still discovering ourselves. I mean, I guess, the frontal lobe isn't done developing. And I feel like it doesn't start to fully actually take root and like really solidify until like 27, 28. But 25 is definitely that turning point. I mean, research has shown that. But yeah, she's like emphasizing the age that she had me at. It doesn't quite correlate. I was 26 when I had you, so I was old, right? Not the fact that she's like this age now, right? God forbid, she doesn't want to say her age then, right? Which at that time was probably like late 40s, early 50s. So I guess, I don't know, she's like ashamed of that. But I was old. So it's just like, okay, so I shouldn't ask you about your drinking because you had me at 26 and you were old. So, but what I believe she's trying to say is, I've done, look, I'm trying to make sense of this shit. I get it, but I can't formulate it because this shit, God, narcissist, man. She's not the only one who I've heard say things and it's just like, yeah, this don't make sense what you're saying, or this, I don't know why you're saying this, or I see what you're trying to do, but close but no cigar. But what the point she was trying to make was just like, I had you when I was, this age. I wasn't 16 when I had you, so I know what I'm doing, right? I had you at 26, and I'm this age now that I'm not going to say. I'm going to instead talk about how I had you at 26. And just to let you know, that means because I was old when I had you then, that means I'm old now or older now. So you can't talk to me about what I do with drinking. Although, yes, it may affect you at times because I'll bully you whenever I drink, and I'll berate you whenever I drink, and I'll do whatever I want to do with you because I had you. You are an extension of me. You cannot dare. Like, it's so emphasizing her age, emphasizing her weight, and her sacrifices to attempt to guilt trip me into silence or compliance rather than addressing my concerns or concern with her drinking. Like, looking back on it, it's not like I just, I walked into the kitchen and, saw the wine glass. I'm just like, have you been drinking? Like, I was a respectful kid for the most part. Like, I did what I had to do. I got the grades, although I was still being yelled at. Like, I was doing everything she wanted me to do. But of course, as you all know, it's never enough for the narcissistic mother. So a simple question about her drinking, she instead deflects to what she's done for me, which shows her defensiveness, right? Like, what does that have to do with anything? But this is common for self-righteous, narcissistic individuals who are unwilling to acknowledge their mistakes or their flaws, which honestly, at the time, I wasn't trying to make her feel bad. It was just like, I just wanted to know, right? Now that I'm older, looking back on it, with me being neurodivergent, an HSP, there are things where I'm not quite grasping, especially at 19, what to say and what not to say. But obviously, as time went on, especially after instances like in the voice memo, I learned, okay, don't ask her about that. Don't question her about what she's doing. And not the fact that she was drinking was wrong. It's just how her behavior is towards me when she's drinking. So when I asked her about that, it was just like, okay, do I need to prepare myself for an incoming? But my neurodivergent brain at the time wasn't thinking like, oh, she's gonna take this I just wanted to know. It also didn't help that at the time there was a family member or someone who she sees as, this was a family member that she would take care of, and probably still takes care of to this day, who was in the kitchen. And I think that caused a lot of her embarrassment and her defensiveness as well. But yeah, they're unwilling to acknowledge their flaws and their mistakes. It's like, what? What? You don't know who I am? How dare you ask me a question? I'm not a child. Only children get asked questions. Now I'm going to teach you with this 6-minute monologue. Anyway, let's get into the voice memo at hand. Okay, let's get to it. Look at my notes here of the different parts of the voice memo. Okay. 1, shifting blame / deflection. So when she says, you got a roof over your head, you got a car to drive, you got hot water, you got food, don't mistake that, right? So what's happening here? By bringing up the material things that she provides, albeit the basic fundamental things that a parent or parents are to provide their children, she's deflecting from the real issue at hand. The issue being her behavior whenever she starts to drink. Her behavior from the past, experiences of her drinking, right? The bullying, gaslighting, that type of behavior is what prompted me to ask. So this tactic that she uses, deflection, is used to make me feel guilty or indebted to her, shifting the focus away from her actions and reinforcing the idea that I owe her loyalty no matter what. I owe her loyalty and respect no matter what. I definitely did start to feel a sense of guilt in that moment of time. But I also started to feel a tad annoyed because I'm thinking, okay, she's being dramatic yet again. I knew that the dramatics was coming, which is why I started to record. The recording starts where she...
Inflate my bed. Go ahead. Go ahead with that. Go ahead. I'm horrible. I'm a terrible mother. It's going to take me 2 minutes to inflate my bed. Go ahead with that.
Mom, stop yelling.
Yeah, my bed.
You're fine.
And now it's deflated.
It's not about the bed.
I'm a terrible mother. Okay, I'm a terrible mother. I will live with that. I already live with that. I already have been living with that. I'm a terrible mother. I'll go with that to my grave. But I'm not going to sit on the bed that's deflating.
Mom, the reason why you're yelling, it doesn't make sense.
I'm not doing that. It's time I let you know. I'm not doing that. I'm a terrible mother.
Yeah, you're saying that. You know you're saying that about yourself, right?
I'm horrible.
No, you're acting horrible.
I'm horrible.
I have you on video right now, Mom. You sound crazy.
Well, go ahead. Videotape that. I'm a horrible mother for
I'm trying to let you know, Mom.
My bed so I can sit down. I'm horrible. My name is Cynthia Howard, and I'm a horrible mother.
See, that's what you think about yourself. Because no one said that.
I'm horrible.
No, you're acting horrible. Your actions are...
It's already kind of into it. It's not the beginning of it because I, was being pulled into it, and I was just like, wait, no. I know my reality. I know that she's... I would always call it starting problems. but I'm like, okay, she's being dramatic again. Boop. I need to record. So in this, I found that this specific behavior, this specific tactic of deflection or shifting blame comes from a deep-seated need to feel appreciated or needed, which could stem from her own childhood experiences of feeling under or unappreciated. 2, gaslighting, denial of reality. When she says, even if I was drunk, pissy drunk to the floor, don't you ever make that remark to me. This was said a lot in the voice memo. Like a lot, more times than it needed to be said. If at all, don't think it needed to be said. A lot of what the narcissist says does not need to be said. But what's happening here? So she's trying to convince me that I'm wrong for even considering the fact that her behavior may be related to the drinking. Although I have seen some feedback about this type of behavior when it comes to narcissists, like using alcohol as an excuse, which is something that honestly still confuses me. You know, when it comes to the narcissist and then being a functional alcoholic, but it's I don't want to like conflate the two. Like, is it like, what is that? Yeah, because I've heard, the narcissists, use drinking as an excuse for how they act or how certain things have been done. But I mean, from my experience, my narcissistic mother has never used drinking as an excuse for her actions or her behavior. So yeah, just a thought. She's trying to convince me that I'm wrong for even considering her behavior might be related to drinking, regardless of whether it's true. As some of you may know, gaslighting involves denying or distorting reality. The person uses it to make you question your own reality and question your own perception. So what she's doing here in the voice memo could definitely stem from a fear of appearing weak or out of control, right? Narcissists don't like that. They have to always be in control. Always. Always have the power, always have control. That's the number one thing. If there was like top 3 things, that's number 1. Power, control. I need it. That's their viewpoint on it, not me. I mean, not only with her, but with many narcissists, it's like, did you grow up witnessing or experiencing similar dynamics where like power and control is just like number 1? Or was the trauma you endured so severe that you needed to always have power or control over anyone in any situation? And thank God, because this has to do with me as well. When someone is raised by a narcissist or by a parent who messes them up so bad that the kid grows up to be a narcissist, it reminds me of how, narcissism isn't the be all end all. It's not always going to happen, right? Just like we know 1 + 1 is going to be 2. It's not always going to be the same with everyone. Like, we're all different. Learning about disorders like DID, dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality disorder, and then NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, BPD, borderline personality disorder, bipolar, like there's all these different tracks that someone can go down based off of the trauma they've endured, based off of their genes, based off of how their brain works. Like, it's fascinating, really. And it just reminds me of how grateful I am that I am now recognizing that this insidious illness is not something that can be passed down to me, and prayerfully not my sister as well. 3, so emotional manipulation, guilt tripping. When she says, you're getting better treatment than most of your friends, I keep telling you, you will not see it until it's too late. The time you realize it, you'll be speaking and making a speech over my casket, right? So this was said a lot. And even up until I went no contact, this was still being said, where she would very randomly talk about her death. Just talking about her will, and it's stuff like that where as I was trying to still foster a connection, I'd be kind of worried, at least up until I went no contact, right? It was just a lot of subliminals and using her mortality as a means to guilt trip. But this is something that she did often, and I will say does often, because this was happening right up until I went no contact. So much so that it's kind of confusing to where I'm thinking, okay, you use this line, you use this concept, this story so much, you don't think it's gonna get old? So what's happening here when she says this in this voice memo? This is classic guilt tripping. She's attempting to manipulate me into feeling as if I don't appreciate her enough, and that I'll only realize it when she's gone. Her saying this could come from early life experiences and rejection and abandonment, where she felt emotionally neglected or unimportant. Now, see, this is how I could get sucked back in, because I'm thinking like, shit, her childhood must have been crap. She's spoke of how her very evil stepmother would lock the fridge with like one of those like long chains. I don't know, this was back in like, I don't know, 70s, 80s. So long chains with a padlock to where she couldn't go inside of the refrigerator or the freezer to eat. She very often talked about how her older sister, she never really elaborated. It was just, she used me and my younger sister's relationship to, I guess, kind of relive that up until I, left the home at 19. There's a lot of talk about how she just wasn't satisfied with how her older sister treated her. I don't know what she did to her, but it couldn't have been good. It couldn't have been nice, because she talks about her and their dynamic often. My mother would oftentimes kind of push my younger sister onto me, which of course I didn't mind most of the time. Again, I asked for a little sister. I wanted a little sister. And but it'd be times where I'd be ready to go somewhere by myself to hang out with, my friends, as a teenager, and to have your mother say, okay, take your 4-year-old sister, or take your 5-year-old sister, or 6, it's just like, not my plans, but okay, So she used her relationship with her older sister and herself as an excuse as to why she was doing what she was doing, as if trying to recreate that dynamic, that relationship. She even said out of her mouth, I want you to have a better relationship with your sister than I had with my older sister. And so, it's stuff like that where I'm just like, oh, while that could have some truth to it, now that I'm older and I've, done a lot of research and reading of books and watching of videos, and watching of psychiatrists, licensed professionals talking about this personality disorder, along with experiences that have transpired, I can't help but think, okay, so that's why, she wanted me to take her out of the house. She didn't want to take care of her. She didn't know how to. I mean, it makes sense if you are a narcissistic mother who says, you're 18, you're 19 now, get out, right? I've done my job, get out, right? Or hearing her talk about, my younger sister, as she's, berating her and basically using her as narcissistic supply, making her upset, seeing that she's angry, seeing that she's crying, and while she's, in all of those emotions, going on to say, 2 more years, just 2 more years, implying that with my sister at the time being 15, but she was jumping up until the next month when she would be 16, 2 more years until you're 18 and you can get out. Then you're not my responsibility anymore. So it's things like this where like I'll oscillate from like feeling bad for her. I'm just like, gosh, like, wow, this woman is like a kid. All of these narcissists are children. You know, they're emotional toddlers in adult bodies. When I first heard that, I felt that. God damn. Of course. Moving on. Invalidating my experience of her as a person, as a mother, when she drinks, right? The effects of that. So when she says, you treat me like a child, I'm not a child. What's happening here? So by accusing me of treating her like a child, she's invalidating my reasonable concern for her well-being, but also, truthfully, my concern for like my mental well-being. Oh God, she's drinking. It's late at night. It's Friday. I don't have anywhere to go. I can't just leave. Shit, I have to endure this. This reversal of roles where I'm made to feel like the caregiver or the one in the wrong could definitely be rooted in her own childhood experiences, which would make her hypersensitive to any type of criticism. It's funny because I very often felt as if what I said didn't matter in the dynamic. So, you know, listening back to this, I'm like, okay, all right, I see what those words mean now. You know, before just sitting there, listening, recording, I just, all I heard, all I saw was, you know, annoyance, attack, bully, dramatic. Victim mentality, martyr complex. This is one of her signature moves in her narcissistic playbook, the victim mentality. When she says, I already told you when I first walked in that I was having a bad day. I don't appreciate that comment because you always make that inference. Don't do it again. So what's happening here? So she positions herself as the victim. Again, there's that Darvo, emphasizing her bad day and making it seem as if my comment was a question, but my comment is an intentional attack. It's apparent to me that this martyr complex that she exhibits here could definitely originate from a childhood environment where she learned that the only way to get attention or have some validation is to portray herself as the victim. Control/ownership. This is one of her tried and true methods when it comes to what's in her narcissistic arsenal. When she says, I born you, which means I was on earth. You gotta remember, I had you at 26, which means I was old. What's happening here? So she's emphasizing the fact that she gave birth to me. Duh. But she's emphasizing that as if this entitles her to control and dictate my behavior. Right? There's that mindset. You are an extension of me. You are an extension of me. You are not an individual. You are not to have emotional independence. So this ownership usually comes from feelings of inadequacy or lack of control in one's own life, which leads to the need to control others, have power over others in order to feel validated. Manipulative nostalgia. This one's a staple in her bag of tricks. When she says, I bought those movies just for us to watch together, not for you to sit and take and put them by yourself. That's being selfish. Now, I want to see if I left out what I was going to say before. No. Being selfish. I will say that programming that she programmed into my brain of me being selfish really took hold. And in that voice memo, how she said it is how she would always say it. I'm going to speak about this another time as well, but what's coming to mind is a time where I was sent to the mall with her, and I don't remember if I was meeting a friend, and she was like just waiting in the car, but it doesn't matter. She gives me money to go inside of this mall and shop, right? And it's enough money for me to get some clothes. I probably bought a shoe or two. And I remember getting back in the car and I was so happy, so giddy. And she says, after she's like, oh, what did you get? And I like showed her all this stuff. Or I think I might have been the one to like, oh, look what I got, blah, blah, right? Because I was so excited. She always does this thing where she's like picking at her face. And then she's picking at her face and then she looks over and she's like, what'd you get for me? And as I'm rummaging through the stuff, showing her, I stop and I like straighten up and I like look at her like, I thought you gave me money to go shopping. And she goes, hand down, back on the wheel so she can drive off. Typical selfish. Like looking back on that, like thinking back to it now, I'm just like, wow, the manipulation, wow. And I went on to think this way until I started to make friends in my early adulthood to where they're like, oh, you're cool. Oh, you're nice. Like, they're like saying all these things about me. I'm like, wow, really? 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 Like to myself, like, wow, they think, okay. Meanwhile, of course, I'm still under, her reign. I'm not living in the home, but I'm still, mentally under her reign. I still have the programming going on. So yeah, it just took me back to that time. This is something she would say a lot. I mean, ad nauseum. You're being selfish. You're selfish. That's being selfish. You're never satisfied. Which is so indicative of how like she thinks of herself. Like there's a time where she, randomly, I think I like got upset at something. She's like, yeah, I'm a horrible mother. And I like it stirred me a bit. And I was like, that's not what I was thinking. But now that I'm older and I'm looking back on it, I'm like, okay, that's how she saw herself. So she knows she's being Ivan the Terrible. Like she knows it. Okay. So what's happening here in this manipulative nostalgia? So she brings up a scenario, like the movie. In the scenario, she says how she communicated to me that she wanted us to watch the movie together like a family, but that was never explicitly communicated. I mean, think about it. A narcissistic mother comes in from having a bad day, their window's busted, and she comes in and says, I want to watch a movie with you guys. Here's the movie. Don't watch the movie just yet. I'm going to go into the kitchen, do what I have to do. Maybe she'll even say, I'm going to have some wine. And then I'll come back and then we'll watch it together like a family. And then we'll laugh and it'll be great. That's not what happened. That's not how narcissistic mothers communicate. That's not how narcissists communicate, especially when it comes to their partners, their children. Maybe if they're wearing a different mask and they, want to appear a certain way to a certain somebody, sure. But that's not happening in this scenario, in this case. So yeah, this was never explicitly communicated, but she wanted to make it seem as if this is what I wanted. And you're watching the movie by yourself, right? Like a kid. So she basically blames me for not intuitively knowing her desires, creating this false narrative as if to let me know that I've let her down. She's playing into victimhood. And here's that insidiousness. She's like subtly reinforcing my role as someone who is supposed to cater to her emotional needs. She expects her child or her children eventually to meet those needs. She wants her children to fulfill her emotional needs. I'm listening to a video about how this is an emotional boundary. I'll have to look more into that and definitely talk about it in another video, but it's definitely a crossing of an emotional boundary because the parent is looking to the child to fulfill some kind of emotional expectation that the child is not equipped to do. It's like a flag on the play kind of thing. Like, what is this? Projection. This one's a go-to power play in her narcissistic toolkit. When she says, you treat me like a child. What's happening here? So definitely projecting her own insecurities and possible feelings of helplessness onto me by accusing me of what she subconsciously feels about herself. If you know narcissists, you know that projection is very often used as a defense mechanism to avoid confronting their own feelings of inadequacy. I wanted to note the possible childhood traumas that I detected from everything that I've ingested having to do with narcissism. A lot of what I've taken in from licensed professionals when it comes to this personality disorder. I feel the need to speak on that because I'm aware that parents who are raising their own children and can possibly be setting up their child for this type of behavior, possibly because, all trauma isn't going to lead to narcissism. I just felt the need to speak on that. It's important to get this word out when it comes to such a sneaky way of being. This is why I will say this time and time again ad nauseum, that this is really an insidious illness. So just in this snippet, just in this voice memo of her spitting all of this at me, which is, in line with a narcissist, they will always talk at you. You don't get a chance to speak. That's not happening, especially if they are on, that high place, if they're not low on narcissistic supply. In this voice memo, it's very apparent that her emotional needs were not met. I'm guessing anywhere from childhood, early adolescence to early 20s before I came into the picture. Because remember, she had me at 26, so she was old. It's apparent that she definitely might have felt unseen, unheard, unappreciated, or underappreciated as a child, which would lead her to expect constant validation and loyalty from me, the child, at the time. Control and power, definitely important dynamics in whatever household that she grew up in. So that's what I take from all of this. And this is just one voice memo out of a few that I managed to record as I'm in this mental state of my own helplessness, right? Because no one at the time is going to listen to me. I mean, even now in 2023, 2024, with my 15, 16-year-old sister confiding in a pastor to say, hey, I'm being abused, even those efforts are thwarted. So I have to speak about this, and I'm going to continue speaking about this. Hopefully you were able to extract something from this in terms of more knowledge or starter knowledge when it comes to learning about narcissism and how narcissists act and behave behind closed doors. As ever, thank you for taking the time to watch and listen. I truly believe that raising awareness about the insidious nature of narcissistic personality disorder and even narcissistic tendencies is critical. I will stop at nothing to continue educating and shedding light on how this disorder affects not only the victims, but entire families, entire lineages, I believe. And I appreciate your support as I share this very much needed yet personal journey with you all. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation.